Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to everyone here this evening, and particularly like to welcome, like to thank the Trinity Methodist Church for hosting this meeting. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to item 1 on the agenda, which is, I'm sorry, I just got a couple of notes to give to you. Advise the members that the meeting is being live streamed, that officers will be bringing a microphone to each speaker. Everyone should please allow a moment for the microphone to get to you before speaking. The live stream will continue through to the council meeting, so please remain in place and quiet in between each meeting. I'm now going to read the fire evacuation information. This announcement is regarding the safety announcement, and the building is protected by a fire alarm with siren sounders and flashing lights in some rooms. On hearing the evacuation alarm, leave the building by the nearest marked exit route. There are 4 fire exits. 1 are on my left and right, and at the back of this room through the main entrance to the building. Proceed to the assembly point situated within the car park and only take valuables immediately to hand. Anyone who requires assistance will be helped by the officers present after other people have left. Do not return to the building until told it is safe to do so by the senior fire brigade officer attending or church representative in the case of a false alarm. Smoking or any naked flame is not permitted in the building. Filming from the public seating area is permitted, but members must please refrain from filming so it is not to distract the meeting. Mobile phones must be switched to silent. Thank you. I'm going to move on to the appointment of the Vice Chairman. I'm going to propose that Councillor Philip Coots becomes the Vice Chairman, and it's going to be seconded by the leader, John. Thank you, Councillor Ash-Edwards. Can I ask if there are any further nominations for the position? I can't see anyone. So there's no vote required. As there is only one nominee, the Chairman will confirm the Vice Chairman's appointment. I'm pleased to do so. Please come forward, Councillor Coote. Thank you. Would you like to put the chain around your neck to confirm your position? Yeah. I'm very pleased to have you on board.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Your case. Well done. Do you need assistance?
I don't wear necklaces very much.
No. That's good. So we're going to move on to item 2, to confirm as a correct record the minutes of the meeting held on the 30th of June 2021 on pages 3 to 6 of your agenda notes. Are these minutes agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Item 3 is to receive declarations of interest from members in respect of any matter on the agenda. Please raise your hand if you have any item that you wish to raise. Excellent, thank you very much. So item 4 is to consider any items that the Chairman of the charity agrees to take as urgent business. I have none. I move on to item 5, which is council charitable land, and I'm going to invite the head of the regulatory services, Tom Clark, to speak on this item.
Thank you, Chairman. This is your annual report on the charities. The main purpose of it is to approve the accounts for the charities, but slipped in there are also 3 other things to approve. One is to provide a water pipe to the Railway Museum Club at Beechhurst, and the second 2 are to do with St John's Park, which is for the cricket club to maintain their own green and for the kiosk arrangements to become more permanent. So those are the other 3 things you're being asked to approve. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. So should we move on to the recommendation? A vote will be taken by a show of hands. Would you please raise your hand in agreement to the motion?
That's clearly a majority.
A majority. Thank you very much. I'm going to conclude this meeting at 6:51, and thank you very much. If you would like to remain in place as the live stream remains in place, and the public may enter the room and then wait for 7 p.m. to the start of the main council meeting. Thank you. Good evening and a very warm welcome to everyone to the Mid-Sussex District Council meeting. I'm pleased to say that we are joined here this evening by Sandra Prale for item 11, the governance review. Thank you for coming. In recognising that we have a very busy agenda this evening ahead of this meeting, all the supporting papers and motions are on your chairs, so I would refer you to those papers. And I would ask, in order to get through the items expeditiously, I would ask all members to assist by keeping their remarks as brief as possible. Thank you. The live stream will have continued from the Trustees meeting. So I'm now moving on to item 1, which is the opening prayer. O Lord, grant us courage to strive for what is right and good, courtesy to listen to those of different opinion, strengthen us through difficulties and pressures, and guide us in our deliberations so that we may act in the interests of all in our district, to the glory of your holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. I'm now moving on to item 2, and it's the appointment of the Vice Chairman. I know we have appointed Councillor Coote as Vice Chairman in the previous Trustees meeting, but we have to do the same for him as at the Council meeting. So I'm asking, I'm going to propose Councillor Philip Coote as the Vice Chairman of this meeting, and I would ask for a seconder. I believe our leader will second it. Thank you very much. Are there any other nominations for the position of Vice Chairman of the Council? No? Thank you very much. So therefore, I just confirm, Councillor Philip, your appointment. You have your ribbon, and thank you very much, and you're most welcome. Thank you very much indeed. Excuse me. So we are moving on now to receive questions from members of the public pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 9. One question has been received from Miss Frost. Is Miss Frost here? No, she's not here. Okay. I'm going to read the question and then the Cabinet member will reply. In June, the UK Climate Change Committee published an assessment of UK climate risks, which set out the priority risks and opportunities for adaptation. In presentations accompanying the report, Lord Devon and Baroness Brown emphasised the importance of local decision-making and praised the adaptation plans of some local councils. However, they noted that typically there was a lack of preparedness for changes in UK climate, which are already inevitable. Have key members of MSDC familiarised themselves with the CCC report and looked for any opportunities to increase the resilience of local homes, businesses and environment to climate change? May I ask for a response from the Cabinet Member for Environment and Service Delivery, Councillor John Belsey.
Thank you, Chairman. The Council recognises its role and has taken opportunities to increase the resilience of local homes, businesses and environment to climate change. Our approach is embedded in the policies of all our strategies, including the District Plan, the current sustainability strategy and the district-wide design guide, all of which emphasise the importance of sustainability. We work in partnership with a number of bodies to address this issue, such as the Greater Brighton Economic Board and Homes England, where the principles of sustainable design and construction and place shaping will be delivered as an integral part of the Northern Arc development. Not only have they designed local neighbourhoods where all new residents will be able to access goods and services within a 10-minute walk, but they'll be delivering a comprehensive network of walking and cycling infrastructure, tree-lined streets, sustainable urban drainage systems, EV charging points, and 23% biodiversity net gain. Finally, we are currently preparing a sustainable economy strategy, and the work on this is being overseen by a cross-party member working group. As part of this work, key reports, including the CCC report, are being considered alongside specifically commissioned experts to work on carbon-based signing of the districts and council's premises. The Sustainable Economy Strategy will take a broad approach and will look at a range of projects which can be implemented to reduce carbon emissions and ensure the environmental resilience of our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Belsey. So I'm moving on to item 4, to confirm minutes of the meeting of Council held on the 30th of June 2021. Have we got it? Councillor Salisbury.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd just like to note that on item 13 of the minutes, it notes that as I took up the Cabinet position, I resigned as roles of District Planning Committee and the Vice Chairman of the Council. Just to keep the paperwork tidy, I also resigned as Vice Chairman of the Charities. Thank you.
Thank you. Your reply has been noted. Thank you very much. If there are no other queries, may I have a show of hands to agree the minutes? Thank you very much. They have been agreed. Thank you. We're moving on to item 5, to receive declarations of interest from members in respect of any matter on the agenda. Councillor Eggleston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to declare a personal interest in regards to agenda item 15, the future of the Clare Hall site. I'm a trustee of the Beehive CIO, which is the charity that will be building the replacement to the Martlets Hall in Burgess Hill.
Thank you, Councillor Egerton. That is noted. Thank you. No other declarations? No? Thank you very much. Okay, we're moving on then to consider item 6, to consider any items that the Chairman of the Council agrees to take as urgent business. I have none. So I'm going to move on to item 7, my announcements. As you know, I've only been Chairman since May, but we have had the opportunity to make some extremely informative and enjoyable visits. We visited the Linford and Haywards Heath Day, plus a karate film, which was extremely interesting and informative. I did upset them by saying I thought it was a sport, but in fact they treated it more as a religion than a sport, but it was extremely enjoyable. I also went to the Eastminster Hockey Club, where I was really pleased to meet 7 lady hockey players who were 7 medalists from the Eastminster Club, which was absolutely great. As you can see, the Church of the Sussex Freemasons, I have to say, they had medals far, far in excess of ours. I've never seen so medals in one church. It was amazing, and they were so hospitable. The Youth Anniversary Lunch, the NHS Social Care Frontiers Work Day, which was extremely good. And I must mention the Eastminster Rugby Club, the unveiling of a statue for Matt Ratana, who was highly regarded in the community, and there was a huge presence of the police, the rugby club, and members of the community, and it was a fitting tribute to him. And it was a very, very thought-provoking but enjoyable day that he would have been pleased to have been at. Anyway, thank you very much. I'm moving on now to item 8, which is the making of the Copthorne Neighbourhood Plan, and I'm going to pass to Councillor Forbes, who is proposing this. Yes, I think the microphone is on the way to you.
Thank you, Chairman. All I'm going to say is I propose that the Copthorne Neighbourhood Plan be adopted, please.
Fine. Okay, the motion is to be seconded by Councillor Phillips. Do you wish to speak now or reserve your right?
I'll reserve the right for my
Okay, thank you very much. Has any members got any questions or comments by raising your hand, if you would? Councillor Salisbury.
Thank you, Chairman. We haven't discussed neighbourhood plans for some while because the bulk of them went through some years ago. But it's really, really heartening to see that those who have been still diligently preparing these very important documents are still putting the work in and are coming forward. We had the Hassocks one recently, and I really welcome Copthorne's neighbourhood plan and the work that has gone in by the members of that community. So I fully endorse it, and thank you for bringing it to us tonight.
Any other wish to speak? No? Okay, I'll revert back to Councillor Phillips. Do you wish to speak?
Say a few words.
Of course.
This document is 9 years, several thousand hours and several rewrites in the making. And I'd like to place on record our thanks to the councillors and members of the public who spent a great deal of their time in preparing and completing this document. A special thanks to Mike Livesey, who members will remember was a member of this council until fairly recently, as he and I actually remained on the committee for the entire 9 years. What we're going to do with our time now, I'm not quite sure. But I would support the recommendation to make the plan tonight and hope the members will vote for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. So we're going to take a vote by a raised hand. I'm just going to read the recommendation being voted on for the benefit of members and viewers and listeners. The recommendation is on page 19. It is recommended that Council notes the outcome of the Copthorne Neighbourhood Plan referendum and formally makes the Copthorne Neighbourhood Plan part of the development plan for the Copthorne and Worth ward. May I please have a show of hands?
Overwhelming majority, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So we're moving on to item 9, report of the returning officer as to the person elected as district councillor for the ward of Ardingly and Balcombe on 8th of July. This is on pages 25 to 26, and I'm going to invite the returning officer, Tom Clark, to speak on this item.
Yes, as members will be aware, Councillor Jenny Edwards was elected on that day, and she's with us tonight, and Council is asked to note her election.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak on that item? Fine, so the item is noted. Thank you.
I think a vote, Chairman.
Oh, do we want to vote? Okay, I apologise. So could I have a raised hands? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Which one are we on now? We're on. Have we done that? Just yes. Moving on to item 10, to receive the report of the monitoring officer on the Political Balance Section 15, Local Government and Housing Act 1989, the Local Government Committee and Political Groups Regulations 1990. They're on pages 27 to 30 of your agenda. I'm going to invite the monitoring officer, Tom Clark, to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. As the report sets out, the political balance is there for your interest. Some members will note that effectively it's back to where we were in May 2019, except we now have one more Green independent member and one less independent member, and the political balance has been adjusted accordingly, and I'd invite you to approve it.
So do I have your agreement to move the item from, to ask the council to agree to this item? Agreed? Thank you. So we're moving on to item 11, which is the Mid-Sussex District Council Governance Review Summary. Again, I'm going to invite Tom Clark to provide an introduction.
Thank you, Chairman. This is the summary report. Members will recall that they had a workshop previously on this, and tonight you're asked to approve the recommendations and the implementation, which you'll find on pages 37 and 38.
So this item is going to be proposed by Councillor Ash Edwards.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Good evening, members. And can I begin by thanking Sandra Prail for undertaking the governance review for the council and for the way in which she's gone about it, and I think it's been a very constructive process all round, and I'd also like to thank members for engaging with it and taking part in the opportunities that were provided for members to contribute and have their say. It is, of course, timely to keep governance under review and to undertake this review. We had a new council in 2019, a lot of newly elected councillors who had not served on a district council before. And of course, for over half of our time so far, we've been working in a very different way to the way councils usually work, being having remote meetings during the pandemic. And so a timely opportunity to just reflect on how we work. And just to highlight in proposing the recommendations, some of the central conclusions from the report, that the council's governance framework is not atypical for a district council. The constitution meets the statutory requirements and is fit for purpose, and that it would be, it's identified in the report, appropriate for there to be a review, particularly of scrutiny, to consider best practice and opportunities to have greater impact in a less resource-hungry manner, I think is the way it's put in the report. And the recommendations are set out in two phases. Firstly, in terms of supporting councillors' skills and cross-party dialogue, and secondly, the more formal work in terms of looking at governance structure, in particular in relation to scrutiny committees. And Chairman, I just wanted to just put on record some of the work that's been done, particularly in terms of cross-party dialogue. Group leaders are meeting regularly. We met this week, indeed. And there are a number of examples of cross-party working, which I think have been a success. Recently, there was a cross-party parking strategy working group, which was able to put forward recommendations that were agreed overwhelmingly, might have even been unanimously, I can't fully remember, forgive me, on a subject that is normally quite contentious, and members were able to come together and do a proper piece of work cross-party on that. And indeed, as has already been referred to by Councillor Belsey, the Sustainable Economy Strategy is a cross-party working group taking forward an important area of work. And I'd also just recall, Chairman, that every budget under this administration so far has commanded broad cross-party support, and there's been an ability for political groups to accommodate proposals from each other in that process. And so I think there are some good foundations there that we should try and take forward. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you very much. This motion is seconded by Councillor Webster. Do you wish to speak, Councillor Webster, or reserve your right to speak later?
I'd like to reserve my right, please, Chairman, and if you'd forgive me for not standing up, please.
I forgive you.
Thank you.
Okay. Did any member wish to raise a question or has a comment? Could you please indicate by raising your hand? Councillor Cornish.
Thank you. You can hold. Thank you very much, and thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Councillor Ash Edwards. And just want to say, firmly welcome the report by Sandra Prail. So thank you for all the work that went into that. Specifically on recommendation R1, which resorts to improve member relations, which was a key recommendation and supported by Catherine Hall when members met to discuss this. And as far as I'm aware, all members have agreed in principle to adhere to these recommendations, which are essentially for councillors from all parties to work more collaboratively and effectively for the good of Mid-Sussex residents. But with this in mind, would the leader of the council agree with me that
you know, for a fellow member of the Chamber to attempt to publicly discredit our newest elected member with comments on social media regarding their personal planning application is not particularly acting in the spirit of this report, or specifically R1 recommendation. And how would such behaviour create a more effective and harmonious culture between members, or in fact represent a professional, well-run council? Thank you.
Councillor, would you like to reply?
Thank you, Chairman. I understand the point that Councillor Cornish makes, and I don't think this is the forum particularly for that, because I understand that the matter he refers to has been considered by the Standards Committee and was judged to not be a breach of the Code of Conduct. But what I would encourage all members to do is to treat each other with respect, to act in good spirits, and to talk about the issues that affect the residents that we represent. And I think that every member needs to embark on our work in that spirit, and I hope that's the way we can move forward, Chairman.
Thank you. Do I have anyone else who wishes to speak? Otherwise, I will pass back to Councillor Webster. Have you anything you wish to add?
No, thank you, Chairman. I have nothing further to add.
Okay.
I think the report's very clear in what it says, and I think we are all working well towards those recommendations, and we're all trying very hard, in fact. Thank you.
Well done. Okay, thank you. So members are asked to agree the recommendations and implementation plan set out at pages 37 and 38 of the Council agenda. A vote will be taken by a show of hands, please. Thank you. That's agreed. Thank you very much. So we're now going to move on to item 12, recommendations from Cabinet held on the 26th of July and 13th of September 2021, which is on pages 41 to 44. Just before we do that, thank you very much for attending. Thank you. So the recommendations are proposed by Councillor Ash Edwards. Do you wish to speak? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I just formally propose the Cabinet recommendations from July and September in relation to budget management. I think they're self-explanatory. We're happy to take any questions, Chairman.
Thank you. This motion is again seconded by Councillor Webster. Do you wish to speak or reserve your right to speak at a later date?
I'll reserve my right, please, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Have we got any questions from members or comments? Please indicate by raising your hand. No? Okay, thank you very much. Do you wish to speak, Councillor Webster, or shall we go?
I'm pleased to second this report. Thank you.
Okay, so just to say that the recommendations being voted on are listed on pages 41 to 43. So please may I take a vote by show of hands.
Clear majority, Chairman.
Thank you very much. The motion is carried. Thank you very much. So we're going to move on to item 13 to receive the leaders' report. Please, Councillor Ash Edwards, would you like to speak?
Thank you very much, Chairman. And firstly, can I say how great it is to be here in East Grinstead today? We obviously normally have our physical meetings in the Chamber in Haywards Heath and have been working virtually for some time now, but really nice to be out and about in the district and to be in East Grinstead, a really important part of our district. And secondly, can I welcome Councillor Edwards as the newest elected member of the Council. Welcome and congratulations on your by-election victory. I hope you enjoy your time as a councillor. Chairman, a few matters to report on. Firstly, it won't have escaped members' attention that there was a cabinet reshuffle at national level, which has resulted in a new Secretary of State and ministerial team, and greater emphasis, certainly in terms of the name on the tin, on levelling up. I'd like to thank actually the previous Secretary of State, Robert Jenrick, for really significant amounts of engagement with council leaders, certainly far beyond anything I've ever known in my time as a councillor over the last couple of years, and we look forward to engaging with the new ministerial team It won't have also escaped members' notice that the decision on our Levelling Up Fund bid hasn't yet been made. Decisions haven't been made on any Levelling Up Fund bid as yet, and so we await news on that in due course. Chairman, I wanted to provide an update on the resettlement of refugees from Afghanistan. Over the summer, it won't have escaped anyone's attention, and will have, I think people would have been very moved by some of the events in Afghanistan and people wanting to move to safety and to take up the support that's been committed to by the UK and other countries. And I wanted to just provide some reassurance that there are very well established arrangements in West Sussex that were in place indeed before the events of recent weeks and months to resettle refugees as part of the national resettlement programmes. Launched in April, the resettlement programme for local personnel who had supported UK forces in Afghanistan was already underway, and a number of families have already been resettled in West Sussex, and further arrivals are expected, and of course they will need appropriate levels of support as they begin their new lives in the UK. And that original scheme is now operating alongside the much enlarged scheme that the government has committed to as part of the departure from Afghanistan, and that's being operated by the Home Office. And I would just like to reassure members that the Council is actively engaging in that work as we give a warm welcome to refugees from Afghanistan. And we'll continue to play our part alongside our significant commitments that we have for example, temporary accommodation for people in our district already. Chairman, over the last few weeks, Gatwick Airport has published their formal proposals to bring their standby runway into permanent operational use, and a public consultation is now underway. And members will have heard me talking about this issue before. The Council has commissioned external advice to help inform our response, and we'll plan to have a member workshop in due course to help inform that response. The implications and impacts of expansion will be very significant and wide-ranging, and I think it's important that that isn't underestimated. To go to have a dual runway airport just up the road will undoubtedly bring some opportunities for people in terms of jobs and economic impact, but will have very considerable environmental and infrastructure impacts as well. And I think it is right that those proposals are very fully scrutinised. And while we are not the decision maker as a council, while none of the neighbouring councils are decision makers, we do have a role in the development consent order process that Gatwick is now embarking on. And I think it's really important that we do our part and do everything we can to ensure, as I said, those proposals are fully scrutinised, that the impacts are fully explored and understood, and mitigations identified so that they can be put before the decision makers, the Secretary of State, in due course. Chairman, as members will have noticed, the Deputy Leader is not with us tonight. She's unwell and sends her apologies, and so I can also take questions on any matter relating to her portfolio if members so wish. I just want to highlight, and the Deputy Leader asked me to highlight, that there are some decisions in MIS today in relation to the orchards and some renewals of leases, which is always very positive news in the current economic climate. And hopefully many members will have been able to attend the recent workshop on the Burgess Hill Growth Programme and hear some of the updates from Homes England around the progress being made there, which is very considerable and really positive to see how the principles that the Council set around upfront delivery of infrastructure, around acceleration of delivery, around really strong environmental principles are coming good in practice and being delivered on the ground. And I think that's very welcome, and we will continue to do everything that we can to support that being developed and delivered in practice. Happy to take any questions, Chairman.
Thank you. Have members? Councillor Knight.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you all hear me? There's no mic here. There is, so I beg your pardon. The Leader has referred in his report to the district's infrastructure. I'd like to ask what assessment has been made of the impact on infrastructure in Mid-Sussex of the Lib Democratic proposals to increase national housing targets to 380,000 houses a year.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Knight raises an interesting question, and we'll see undoubtedly all sorts of proposals come out of party conference season going on at the moment. But it is noteworthy that the Liberal Democrats, who often opposed new developments in Mid-Sussex, actually want to increase national house building targets by a quarter. And I'm sure that as we go through future planning processes, they'll be able to explain to Mid-Sussex residents where those additional homes would go. For Mid-Sussex, that would require a quite significant uplift of several hundred, particularly taking into account the unmet need issues in our housing numbers, and undoubtedly that would have a very considerable impact on our environment and our infrastructure. And I think that the approach that has been taken at the moment is the right one. Clearly those members who want to see higher housing numbers will have to justify that to the electorate. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I have a question from Councillor Eves.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, as a former interpreter, I'm particularly interested in the Afghan situation, and I'm happy to hear the words from the leader about reassurances that we will be taking some Afghan families here. The International Interpreters Association has been campaigning since the British Army left in 2013 for these people to be resettled here, and finally it's happening. So can you tell us how many we have agreed to take? Thank you.
Would you like to respond?
Thank you very much, Chairman. It's the long-established practice that we don't comment on the numbers of refugees being resettled in Mid-Sussex or their locations for very obvious reasons. These are people who are fleeing persecution and very difficult circumstances, and it's important that they are given the privacy and the ability to go about resettlement without being in the spotlight. What I can just simply reiterate is that refugees have already arrived in West Sussex and are being resettled, and that process will continue. And as we did with the Syrian refugee programme, we will play our part and ensure that people who need to rebuild their lives and to flee persecution are able to do so within the national policy, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Bradbury, please.
Thank you, Chairman. My question to the Leader is in relation to the Burgess Hill growth deal. And in doing so, I think I should probably declare that I'm the Chairman of West Sussex County Council. So my question is, the very interesting workshop last week, for which I thank the officers who presented. I thought it was really interesting and informative. One of the numbers that came out of that, which was a really eye-watering number, that there's now £1 billion worth of investment there, which is a combination of public sector and private sector investment. My recollection is that the numbers were 400 million of public and 600 million of private. I think I've got that roughly right. So I just wanted to ask the Leader two things really. First of all, does he want to reflect on the success of that approach that combines those two funding streams so successfully? And then the second thing is, would he and officers please do more to publicise this, the investment that's being made? Because personally, I don't think it's particularly clear to Mid-Sussex residents just what a significant investment this is. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bradbury, just our congratulations on your appointment. And I'll pass you to the Leader to respond to your question, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And I think on Councillor Bradbury's last point, I think he's helped do a little bit of that this evening, which is very, very welcome, because I think it is absolutely right that it is fully understood the work that's being done to deliver the growth programme and the investment into Burgess Hill and indeed the surrounding communities. And Councillor Bradbury would not let me answer the question without, of course, referring to Anstey and Staplefield and Hurstpit Point and Sayers Common parishes being the immediate neighbours, as well as Burgess Hill town itself. And we've always recognised that this isn't just a growth programme involving Burgess Hill, but actually it impacts the whole district, and there's a much broader economic benefit and objective here, and projects such as the Science and Technology Park are a really good example of that, where the the investment that's going into that part of our district will have not just benefits and impacts in our district, but actually on a sub-regional basis. The investment going into Burgess Hill is one of the largest investment programmes in the South East. It's one of the largest growth areas in the South East, and I think Councillor Bradbury makes a very good point around leveraging that combination of public and private investment. We have secured very substantial support from government to do the things that people want to see in terms of improvements in infrastructure, getting things delivered up front. You know, it's often a concern, quite understandably, of residents and councillors as well, that development happens, the infrastructure sometimes lags behind, and we've tried to turn that on its head for the Northern Arc and to ensure the infrastructure is there up front and is able to support the development of that new community. And so we need to keep ensuring that that is understood and the benefits of that will be felt very widely, and it's important that the benefits of that are maximised, and just as we have new homes being created, it's really important that the new jobs come with that as well to support that community, as well as the community facilities and the investment that's going to be going into the new schools, the new community outdoor sports centre and all the neighbourhood centres there as well. And I think it was very interesting, and members were reminded in the session we had last week of the environmental credentials of the Northern Arc, and over 20% biodiversity net gain being aimed for there, significantly ahead of the kind of national targets on that as well, Chairman. Thank you.
Councillor Hainwood?
Yes, you mentioned Gatwick formal proposals, and you said a working party would be set up to consider. I'm wondering, will the full council have opportunity to look at the results and the conclusions that this working party arrive at? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gibson, please. Oh, I do apologise. I'm jumping the gun. Would you like to respond? I'm so sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. I apologise if I didn't make myself fully clear. I said a member workshop rather than a working group, so all members will have the opportunity to be involved in discussing that issue.
Thank you so much. I do apologise. Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to agree with the leader that Gatwick second runway or emergency runway or whatever it seems to be called this month is a very interesting issue in terms of the balance, the economic performance and the importance of that against the impacts that we're going to see, particularly in the north of the district. One of the things I'd like to highlight is that we had a briefing on the district plan and numbers were thrown out about Crawley's unmet need and the extent that we would be invited to provide that unmet need within our district. Now, one of the things that I would like the analysis that we do to consider, what would be the impact of Gatwick giving up the reserve land, which is currently to the south of the main runway, if it is pushing forward with the emergency runway? Do they envisage ever that there will be 3 runways? If they gave that land up, then there would be opportunity to address their housing needs within their own boundaries and not push that down onto us. Does the leader agree that that would be an interesting aspect to study?
Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. I think very interesting is probably an appropriate word for it, and I think that Councillor Gibson makes a good point in the sense that Gatwick are sort of wanting to have their cake and eat it on that, and I think that's one of the areas that will need to be part of the scrutiny and the consideration of impacts that is undertaken, and of course it is highly likely that the routine use of the second runway and the economic calculations that are generated from that into the housing methodology will of course increase the unmet need figure from Crawley further as well as having direct impacts in the neighbouring districts and boroughs. So yes, we'll all need to be in the mix, and of course Crawley is the authority that land sits in, will have their own view on that as well, I would expect.
Thank you. Councillor Gibson, please. Councillor Eggleston, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not in disguise. There is a question at the end of this observation, and it concerns the Burgess Hill growth area, and I'm sure all members do welcome the investment that is taking place in this part of Mid-Sussex. And there are aspects of it which, regrettably, residents in the area just don't see as investment, or it doesn't really concern them because it doesn't affect their day-to-day lives. If you're a member in Burgess Hill, a member of this council who represents a ward in Burgess Hill, your post bag will be filled with one issue and one issue only, really, and that's the condition of the Martlet Shopping Centre. And I know we have the Levelling Up Fund, and personally, and I speak on behalf of my group, we really want that bid to succeed because we do believe it is a way of unlocking this scheme. But obviously, if it doesn't succeed, then, and I've raised this point before, we are back in that position where the sore point in the master plan is the inability to bring forward that development. And I know it's in the hands of New River Retail and not in our hands, but I'd like some reassurances from the leader of the council that we will, as a council, do everything within our power to ensure that the private landlord of that estate brings forward a scheme in the absence of the Levelling Up Fund, which would at least go as far as we can to meet the needs of the residents of Burgess Hill. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eggleston. The leader, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Eggleston, for that question. And I think this council has been very consistent in its aspirations to see that regeneration scheme brought forward, and I think that's on the record and very clear. And I welcome the support that Councillor Eggleston has expressed for the Levelling Up Fund bid that we've put forward to the government, and I very much hope that that will succeed.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Hicks.
Thank you. Another question relating to the Burgess Hill Growth Programme, and whether the Leader recognises the concerns expressed at that briefing from all members of all parties in terms of the lack of a sustainable energy generation in terms of the new homes, which after the current phase will be all electric, but with no solar panels or heat pumps being built into the new homes, and whether the Leader would be able to raise that with Homes England to try and get a more sustainable development for the Northern Arc.
Would you respond, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Hicks, for the question. And I think the points the members made at that meeting were noted by not just our officers, but also by Homes England. And I think the track record is very good in terms of trying to make the Northern Arc a very sustainable, environmentally friendly development. And I'll just remind the Council that it will, in partnership with Southern Water, be using 100% grey water across the development, saving millions of litres of water every year. There will be EV charging points installed as standard across the Northern Arc. And as I mentioned earlier, aiming for over 20% biodiversity net gain, which is very considerable and goes far and beyond what you would normally get from a development, and certainly one that was just left to the private sector and not being brought forward in the partnership approach that we've been able to establish with Homes England. So I understand the points that are being made in terms of the aspiration to go further, and I think we'd all share that, and I'm sure those opportunities will be explored and taken wherever possible. But I think it's important, Chairman, that we don't underestimate the very significant sustainability achievements on that development that have already been made.
Thank you, Leader. I can't see any other member wishing to ask, so I'm going to move on to item 14, the report of the Cabinet members, including questions pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 10.1. I'm going to ask, in the first instance, Cabinet Member for Economic Growth, Councillor Hillier, to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. A few quick updates which I hope will be of interest to members. As some will know, and referred to earlier by Councillor Belsey, work on the Sustainable Economic Strategy by the working group is proceeding on schedule, and I'm very grateful to the chair of the working group, Councillor Pulford, for the way he's handled a very difficult agenda, and indeed to the whole working group for their input thus far. Work is also proceeding well on our inward investment marketing plan, and we hope to have a draft interactive brochure ready for consideration in November. And whilst on this point, members will have read in MIS concerning the great news in relation to our officer team assisting Universal Quantum, bringing their thriving business to our district, which is excellent, and hopefully we'll have more of that. Links with our business associations and key businesses continue to be strong, and we've had some excellent feedback from businesses, which is going to be fed into the sustainable economic strategy work. It's been extremely useful to hear their views and what the challenges are they face and things that we can do as a district council to alleviate those and help them thrive. A second newsletter has gone out to those businesses and has a huge amount of useful information and links to a variety of support for them, particularly in relation to the post-COVID recovery. Also in relation to the business associations, those that study MIS carefully will see that we have now agreed service level agreements with them, which means that both MSDC and they will have a clear understanding of what we expect from each other in return for the grant funding we provide. And finally, our officers have been working really hard over the last couple of months with our towns and parishes in relation to developing our bid to the Welcome Back Fund, again, as per the decision which was recently posted on MIS, and they are now working with those towns and parishes to support them through the processes of the procurement in order to deliver the package. And that is all I have. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much for your report. Have any members got any questions? I can see Councillor Eggleston would like to ask your question.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm very grateful to Councillor Hillier for, and I apologise for bombarding you with emails on this, on the Welcome Back Fund, but for your assistance and the assistance of your staff in answering some of my queries. Just two supplementaries, if I may. The town and parishes have been given £4,000 and £2,000 respectively for shop vinyl prints on empty shop units. And it was my understanding, and certainly the understanding of the team at Burgess Hill Town Council, that you couldn't use the Welcome Back Fund on private land, private property. And obviously, I would imagine 99% of all shop units in Mid-Sussex are privately owned. And my query is whether that £4,000 and £2,000 is actually money that the towns and parishes could use. So if you could check that with the team, that would be grateful. And lastly, a late arrival at the query ball is I've had a WhatsApp message from my leader, Councillor Alison Bennett, who says that I've just read an email from the Hurst Parish Clerk. Basically, she says they've had no communication on it, the Welcome Back Fund, since I shared the MIS briefing with her on the 2nd of September. Now, it's possible that it's gone into spam or junk, but I'd be grateful if you could just check to see that everyone who is submitting a proposal is fully engaged in this process. Thank you.
Councillor Gibson. Councillor Gibson. I'm so sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And also, I'd like to thank Councillor Eggleston for providing the questions in advance. It makes this a whole much better discussion, and thank you for the question. In relation to the vinyls, you raised it before the meeting, and it's an interesting point, but I'm assured that actually they are not a breach of the rules because they are not of direct benefit to the shops and the shop owners themselves. But I would hope that that clarification will be provided by the economy team as they work with officers at towns and parishes and deal with that sort of question. So an interesting point, but I believe that at the moment that is not an issue. In relation to Hurst Parish Council, I can't comment upon that. It sounds unfortunate, and obviously I will look into it and have myself or officers liaise with Councillor Bennett. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hillier. Councillor Gibson.
My question justifies your enthusiasm to hear it. Councillor Hillier will be well aware that I'm very pleased to hear about the Village Centre Studies money, as I've bent his ear on this big time before. I would like to make a plea that the money be extended to Copthorne. I think to exclude a village of that size simply because it arguably does not have a centre and therefore does not figure in the relevant paragraphs of the district plan is unfortunate. So if I could ask him to review that. And the second point that I would like is that to make sure that there is a suitable linkage between the output of these studies and the district plan update to ensure that, for instance, that we make best use of village centres, and for instance that we don't allow derelict buildings to sit on prime commercial land which could be brought into use, and make better local facilities more sustainable for our villages. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hiddier.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the question, Councillor Gibson. In relation to Copthorne, I will feed that back to officers. There is a certain amount of flex in these proposals, and obviously if there's something that can be done there that's not going to be the detriment of Crawley Down, but also sits within the European rules, I'm sure we'd be happy to consider it. And in relation to your comment about the linkage with the plan, I think that's a point very well made, and absolutely agree. In relation to vacant properties, as somebody who had a background in commercial property and the leasing side of it, if only we could do what we wish to do. They are in private ownership, and I guess we rely upon central government to incentivise them to get on with getting these occupied properties full. I think the point is well made, Councillor, and noted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hiddier. Any other questions from members? No? Okay, we'll move on to Councillor Demir.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Hi, hello everyone, and it's so lovely to see everybody and to meet our new councillor. So good to see everybody at last. I'll be brief. As I think you all know, our Revs and Bens teams have paid out 7,200 grants during COVID, totalling over £48.5 million. We also put in place free independent debt advice, and also through Telljoy have contacted our vulnerable people. From May this year, we've also encouraged people to take up breathing space, again to protect those struggling. So please, if any of you know anyone who is struggling, tell them to talk to us as soon as possible. As furlough ends this week, I'm sure there may be others out there. Also, because of the recently extended government guidelines for test and trace, because that now goes to the end of March next year, we're now also able to help parents or guardians whose child is self-isolating, so please bear that in mind. Our collection of business rates is currently about 8% down against last year. So again, I'm asking for your help. Could you get that message out to all businesses that if they're eligible, please apply for our expanded retail and nursery discounts. That's 66% discount, so it's worth having. Our teams are busy contacting as many as they can, but help me spread the word. So all in all, our teams have done a really, truly good job, I think, and I congratulate them. But it seems that they've also been recognised by others, as 2 of our Mid-Sussex teams are in the final of the IRRV Awards. They've been finalists for excellent in partnership working and also excellent in social inclusion, which I'm really proud of. The results are out next Thursday, so please hold thumbs for them and I'll let you know. On the comms side, they're working on Mid-Sussex Matters, of course, which comes out mid-November with features and news as well as information. The IT people are working quite hard, well, they're always working hard, for goodness sake. They helped me this morning anyway, to improve our customer experience, both digitally on the phone, so that we are making interactions with the council as easy and as clear as possible. Lastly on that, I'd like to draw your attention to our new safeguarding policy for voluntary and community groups, which is in the MIS today. Hopefully you've seen it. I do urge you to read this, as it's in our own interests, and safeguarding is the responsibility of all of us. If you don't mind, I'm going to be emailing you tomorrow with a copy, so please read it. Lastly, because you've heard quite enough from me and I'm quite boring, hopefully you're as excited as I am, as ever, with our digital infrastructure project. As you know from the member briefing, the first 2 phases are almost complete, and the team are now working on the network and service providers on the commercialisation. That's going to be supported by a website, a landing page for businesses and for residents to express an interest. That will go live late in October as the testing begins next week. As I think you all know, this project is already attracting more investment into our area, and as it grows, it'll attract more. As important, though, in the first build stage, the project, I'm going to read this because it's really impressive. The project has provided local employment. 87% of the people delivering it are local. And they've also put investment into digital skills for our students. Nearly £1 million has been spent with our local business, so I think it's good news all round. And the Rural Connectivity Programme design is now underway. So watch this space for more information. And that's it from me. I'm happy to take questions.
Question for Councillor Demir. Councillor Hicks.
Thank you. The Cabinet member talked about changes in the methods of customer satisfaction, and I wondered if that will include measuring the responses from users of electronic forms and email communications, not just telephone conversations, in terms of customer satisfaction. And in terms of electronic forms, also, could we get a commitment that all electronic forms will automatically provide a receipt to people who submit them? At the moment, there's at least a couple of forms where there's no actual formal acknowledgement in terms of a copy maybe of what the submission, the person who submitted it has sent off. Thank you.
Councillor Demir.
Thank you, Councillor Hicks. Thank you very much indeed. The answer to your first question is yes, and the answer to your second question is I don't know, but I'll find out.
No.
Is that okay?
I can't see any other members. Ah, so sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Councillor Demir. It was very interesting and good to hear about the support for particularly parents of children who are isolating, and as I'm sure other members would like to get that word out as best as possible. Is there any material already prepared for communicating that to communities, particularly digital content that we can share? And if not, is that something that could potentially be looked into to help us get the word out? Otherwise, we're happy to do that anyway, but the more that we can be helped to do that, the better. Thank you.
Councillor Demir, do you wish to respond?
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor. It's actually underway, so it will be out there pretty soon.
Thank you, Councillor Demir. I can't see anyone else who wishes to have another question, so I'm going to move on to the Cabinet Member for Environment and Service Delivery, Councillor John Belsey.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, everyone. Firstly, I just wanted to update fellow councillors and any watching members of the public on the current position on fuel and how that might affect our services. From a waste service perspective, I'm pleased to say that Serco have got no immediate issues with regard to fuel or indeed other matters such as lack of HGV drivers or transportation issues, and therefore it currently remains business as normal regarding waste collection, which you may have seen is not the case with some other authorities. However, there are potential implications for ID Verdi, who use garages to fill up with fuel in the same way as us fellow Mid-Sussex residents do, and they are not currently running at quite full capacity. So we are looking at ways we might be able to assist ID Verdi, but in the meantime we have asked them to prioritise on grass and pitch cutting and bin emptying over other activities such as head cutting to ensure we minimise disruption to Mid-Sussex residents. Of course, we hope the position will resolve itself soon, but if not, I will send a further update to members. I also wanted to give an update on the leisure centres. Following a full reopening, subject to government guidelines back in July, we are still closely monitoring performance of our leisure centres with the agreed open book reconciliation process. Although we've got provisional figures for July and August, which are still to be agreed with both parties, they do show strong performance compared to that of which have been projected. Although, unsurprisingly, at this time, cost of running the centre still outweigh income levels. I'm pleased to say that feedback from users is overwhelmingly positive, and I'd like to thank our residents who are using our facilities again, as well as the staff making sure they're safe places to visit. We're seeing gradual further adjustments to the way our facilities are used and to their capacity in accordance with guidelines. However, rather than seek to get back to exactly the way things were done before, we will be looking to retain some of the operational improvements to processes due to the pandemic and ensure better customer experience on an ongoing basis for users of our facilities as a result. I'm happy to take any questions.
I don't see anybody who wishes to... Oh. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. My particular question is that before the pandemic, we were putting in a pilot for food waste collection. What's the situation on the proposals for collecting food waste in the district?
Councillor Belsey, do you wish to respond? Or would you respond?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Jackson, for the comments and the question. As you know, we had a food waste pilot agreed, and it's my understanding we can still go ahead with that pilot, but it does need some time to change the fleet, and I think at the moment with the pandemic it hasn't been the most appropriate time to be going around people's houses sort of giving the caddies, etc. But I think that is something that we will be looking to introduce next calendar year or next financial year. It's fair to say that there's a lot of moving parts to introducing food waste, especially as ourselves as the collection authority, and we have to work with the disposal authority and vehicle fleets in order to roll out more widely across Mid-Sussex, and we're also doing that in the face of the wider government consultation and guidelines coming out as to how they would like authorities to collect and dispose of their rubbish, and that's a consultation that we responded to over the summer, and we are working with West Sussex, Serco, and keeping an eye on government guidelines with regard to future rollout. But as soon as I'm able to give further updates, I will do, but I think the intention will be that we move forward with the pilot as previously agreed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Henwood.
Thank you. Could you update us on how the collection of electrical goods is progressing?
Councillor Belsey.
Thank you, Chairman. As you know, Councillor Henwood, it was initially when the collection was introduced, there was overwhelming demand for it, which was rewarded with a heavy collection. As far as I'm aware, we have now got to a stage where waste is, when small wee items are left out, they are able to be collected. We had got to a stage where I know that over 90% on the routes were able to be collected. If it's helpful, I will find out just to make sure whether we're aware of any residual items now no longer being collected.
Thank you. Councillor Hicks.
Can the Cabinet member confirm that the Council has the capacity to investigate incidents of fly tipping in relating to particularly to the email correspondence that I copied him in relation to fly tipping in New Way Lane, where evidence was provided of 2 delivery addresses, and in terms of following those up to see if a particular registered waste carrier was used. Thank you.
Councillor Belsey.
Thanks, Chairman. I will back up with Councillor Hicks. I know we have had correspondence on this matter. My understanding was that we were just waiting for some training to be given to our officers in terms of enforcement and how to go about it. And that once that training was in place later this year, we would be going back to look at whether there was sufficient evidence to prosecute in respect to those other matters. But I'm happy to reconfirm that position and report back. That's my understanding of the position.
No further questions for Councillor Belsey? Oh, Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Chairman. In the context of the leisure centres, I'd just like to congratulate the Council on the Play Days initiative. And could the Cabinet member confirm that it will run again next year and possibly be expanded?
Councillor Belsey.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gibson. And I was fortunate enough to attend one of the Play Days myself, and I saw what good feedback they received. I think it's certainly the intention that we will be running Play Days again next year. And I know in terms of locations and venues, etc., the feedback that we receive is very important to helping shape what the Play Days will look like, where we hold them, where they're popular, and what activities we might be able to bring forward. But I share your enthusiasm, and indeed it's a good opportunity to thank all the staff and people who participated in those for what were really welcomed, mostly sunny afternoons. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think I have any other questions for Councillor Belsey, so I'm going to move on to the Cabinet Member for Community, Councillor Webster. Please remain seated, Councillor Webster.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I want to thank residents and councillors for their very constructive engagement in the consultation on the future of Clare Hall, the consultation on the site, which has been expertly managed by our independent consultants. I also want to briefly remind councillors of the anticipated timeline going forward. The online engagement and drop-in sessions have now ended, and there will be a period of reflection following the addition of the final engagement with young people as they settle into the new academic year. Thereafter follows a short consultation period. Independent consultants refer to this as a "you said, we did" exercise to report back on what key themes have been heard during the extensive engagement exercise. The final report to Cabinet will of course be carefully considered. Councillor De Mere has reported on the new safeguarding policy, which I ask you to ensure you are familiar with before engaging further with the charity sector in Mid-Sussex. Apart from the safeguarding points, tick box 1 of Appendix A is essential if applying for grants from the Cabinet Grants Panel. Chairman, I'm happy to report that crime figures across Mid-Sussex show year-on-year decreases in every measured category. I suspect these reductions are due to more police on the ground, lockdown with more people being at home, and very determined cross-county boundary effort to clamp down on criminal activity. As residents go out and about more, I want us all as community leaders to please firstly encourage residents to take care and ensure their premises are well lit, secure, with no step ladders, hammers, etc. left lying around to facilitate opportunistic theft. Often the items stolen in this way have little monetary value but carry huge sentimental value. Secondly, please encourage residents to always report crimes and criminal activity. Members have expressed an interest in visiting the Police Control Centre in Lewis, but sadly these visits have been suspended whilst we deal with COVID. I'm happy to report that Phase 2 of the installation of new high-tech CCTV cameras in Victoria Park, Clare Park, St John's Park, Holteye Avenue and King George's Field are now complete, and they have been fully commissioned by Sussex Police. There is one slight hitch in the use of the CCTV cameras, in that Sussex Police require a specific date and time when an offence has taken place. So if at all possible, if somebody reports something to you, please ask them for a specific date and time wherever possible. A third and absolutely final phase of CCTV at East Court and at Mount Noddy is also progressing well. On a lighter note, I'm pleased to have attended the recent ribbon cutting of the pantry in Burgess Hill and to see how the kiln is working as a community facility. I also look forward to attending the ribbon cutting ceremony at the new Kingsweald Community Centre on the former Kema Brick and Tile site, and Councillor Bradbury, the new Anstey facility. I look forward to attending the opening of that, and if at all possible, I look forward to attending the welcoming tea and cake party at the new home of Mid-Sussex Voluntary Action at the Cherry Tree in Burgess Hill. And I want to thank Councillor Gibson for his positive comments on the children's play days as well, because I, along with all the children of Mid-Sussex, enjoy a good day out. Chairman, I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. Webster. Oh gosh. Councillor Jackson, I think I saw your hand first. Bates.
Right, thank you, Chairman. My particular question is that about the Redwood Centre, which is attached to the Clare Hall. Its use is used at the moment by the Mid-Sussex Scouts and one of the Hayward Heath Scout groups. Can we be assured that their needs will be considered in your future thoughts about Clare Hall or its replacement?
Councillor Webster, would you kindly respond?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, of course they will be considered. They have a tenancy, I suppose you could call it, as a meanwhile, and they have been there some time, and the council is very supportive of the work that the Scouts do across Mid-Sussex, and they will certainly be considered. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bates.
Thank you, Chairman. We're obviously aware that there's a motion later on this evening in respect to Clare Hall. I mean, the essence of what we were trying to get at is, if you've been to the consultation meetings, people seem to want Clare Hall to remain, and when it will reopen. That's one question I'd like answered. And what is the timescale that you're dealing with on this consultation about reporting back, when in future we will be debating all of this once again?
Councillor Webster.
Thank you, Chairman. The timescale for the consultation has been laid out a number of times, and it's been published in MIS. And I would suggest that you wait, Councillor Bates, until we consider the motion that's put before us for any further information.
Thank you, Councillor Webster. Councillor Eves.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Webster, you said the crime figures have gone down in all categories, which is great. As we all know, during lockdown there was a surge in domestic abuse, and I understand the government is now requiring all local authorities to provide a women's refuge, and that we haven't got one here. Is there any plan to introduce one? Because obviously if a woman has to take her children and go off to Horsham or Crawley, it's not great if the children are in school, she's away from her support network, so that would be great if that could be arranged. Thank you.
Councillor Webster.
Thank you, Councillor Eves. Your concern is very valid, and it was discussed at the Police and Crime panel last week, and the Commissioner is very aware of these issues. And as a council, we are working very closely with Sussex Police on ensuring that people are kept safe in Mid-Sussex, as well as the surrounding neighbouring districts and boroughs.
Thank you. Councillor Dempsey.
Thank you. My question is very similar to Councillor Eves, but with a slight addition. I was also going to ask, very pleased to hear that crime is down across all measurable categories. My question was going to be whether or not domestic violence, particularly violence against women, is one of those categories that's measured. And if so, has it come down? Because that is contrary to what a lot of us will have heard, certainly as a national picture during lockdown. And if it's not, can it be added? Thank you.
Councillor Webster.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. That's a very important question, and my understanding was that nationally domestic violence increased at the beginning of lockdown, and there's been considerable publicity on that fact, and those people who are likely to have experienced domestic violence have certain ways now of calling in, asking for help. And according to the Police and Crime Commissioner last Friday, those systems are working well. But it's not only domestic violence against women, it's domestic violence against men and children. And there is a mention of that in the police annual report, a copy of which I have, and it's my intention to ask for copies of that report for all members to have a look at. The latest annual report from Sussex Police and Crime Commissioner, just out last week.
Thank you, Councillor Webster. Councillor Eggleston.
Very fit at the end of this. Thank you, Madam Chair. Two questions again relating to Clare Hall. So firstly, will the Cabinet be considering the reconsideration of the decision it made on the 14th of September 2020 as to the permanent closure of Clare Hall as part of that consultation process, or will that be an earlier decision, bearing in mind the order of the High Court on the 13th of January 2021, which required the Council to use its best endeavours to complete the reconsideration within 6 months and not later than 12 months from the date of the order. So the 12 months is up on the 12th of January 2022. And then the second question is just an assurance that the Council and the Cabinet's mind is open when it comes to considering the use of Clare Hall as a facility as part of the further work on community facilities in Hayward Heath.
Thank you, Councillor Eggleston. Councillor Webster, would you kindly respond?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Eggleston, for your question. And again, I think you're trying to preempt the engagement and consultation exercise. And I will reassure Council again that we will consider very carefully the report that comes to us from the independently run engagement and consultation. I can't say more than that, I'm afraid. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ellis, did you wish to speak? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Could I ask a Cabinet member, a few years ago, you'll be well aware that we worked with officers to deliver Silver Sunday in Mid-Sussex, and since then, after we launched it, we went on to give grants to allow the community to combat isolation, make friends and loneliness. I just wondered, could you, going forward, I know we haven't been able to hold these events because of COVID, that we will support them through a grant system, because they are fabulous to attend and a lot of work went in. I was very honoured to be part of that launch, but I would hate that to fall by the wayside, so that we can actually support that once more through grants. Thank you.
Councillor Webster.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis, for that question. I think it's very important that we are seen to be supporting older, vulnerable and isolated members of the community as much as we are the other sectors of the community. And last year we delivered cream tea in a box, and that was very well received by those who received it, and they enjoyed the social interaction on the doorstep as well. And I understand that officers are currently exploring a similar process for this year, and I'm expecting a briefing note on that within the next day or two. But thank you for the question.
Thank you. If we have no more questions for Councillor Webster, I would ask the Cabinet Member for Housing and Planning, Councillor Robert Salisbury.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, as I sat down tonight, I was slightly bemused, because it occurred to me that 2 meetings ago I was Chairman of the District Planning Committee. The last meeting I was Vice Chairman of the Council. I now stand before you as a portfolio holder, and I'm just going to make damn sure that when we go to the next council meeting, I'm not sitting next to any open doors. Just to give you an understanding of what's going on, the development management team saw a slight drop last year in applications, which is for us a disappointment, of course, because a lot of revenue is earned through the charges. This year, though, things are starting to ramp up again, and particularly in small developments, and that's really good news in a way, because it means there's a lot of spend going on. So economically, as well as for our department, that's good news. For those who are wondering what's going on with the site's DPD, all I can say is we still await the inspector's report, which we await imminently. If he says early October can go up to the 14th or 15th, and whether it happens there, we don't know. But anyway, the team are anticipating that with great interest, as you can imagine, as indeed I suspect all of you are. We are going through the process of the district plan refresh. At the moment, the state of it is that the evidence-based studies relating to housing, employment, retail, gypsy and traveller need has all been commissioned, so that's underway. Due diligence on the sites that were submitted by individuals and developers is now being carried out. And I would just draw your attention, for those of you who sometimes worry about what goes on with enforcement in a district, I think the process of that is less well understood. I would just draw your attention to the new enforcement charter that was published on MIS recently. The one thing that's really important for you all, I think, is you're going to get some mail, I suspect, from local businesses. You will recall that the government extended development rights last year to venues that were hosting pubs, tourist venues and so on, to put up temporary structures to enable to get the footfall out, and that was really well used, and it brought the hospitality economy back to life. We are at a stage now where if you go round your towns, villages and other centres, you'll see that a number of structures were put up, some of them very good, some of them okay, and you must have raised eyebrows at some of them that were still lurking around, especially in areas like the conservation areas and so on. So we are now able to regularise that, and a letter has gone out to all of the venues that have put up temporary structures, asking them to regularise that through a planning consent. So you may well get people phoning you and saying, do I have to do this? Please tell them the answer is yes, and then the normal process will go on. We're encouraging people to have these where they fit in with the place. So it's not a question of now trying to sweep them all away, because they do provide a valuable support for the hospitality industry. To move on to housing, we continue to pursue temporary accommodation. It's very difficult because the private landlords have found more profitable ways of using their properties, and so it's very difficult for our housing team to access that area. So as you know, we have been buying properties and renting properties ourselves through the team, and that goes on, and we've I think as close as contract terms, aren't we, with 5 one-bedroom flats, and we continue to look for opportunities to bring more temporary accommodation in. And that brings me to something which will also put pressure on temporary accommodation, because it was mentioned earlier, somebody mentioned the domestic abuse issues. Now in April, the Domestic Abuse Act received royal assent, and the Act does 2 very important things in improving services to protect victims of domestic abuse. The reason I'm raising it now is because it came into force in July, and we haven't had a meeting since then. But it's valuable for people to understand where this is going. Firstly, the Act imposes new statutory duties on county councils to work in partnership with all those involved in providing services to victims of domestic abuse to assess the need for support, including safe accommodation in its area, prepare and publish a strategy for the provision of such support, and the strategy must identify how the county council will fulfil its statutory duties and must be submitted to the government in October. In this area, it's not only, well, it's in all areas, it's not only the county council, but they are working with districts and boroughs as well. And work has been commissioned with the Sussex Police and Crime Commissioner to complete the assessments to access the level of need and a draft Pan-Sussex strategy. Mid-Sussex, of course, is supporting this work, and the Act requires the County Council to appoint a Domestic Abuse Local Partnership Board, and this is being set up at the moment. In respect of us as a district council, the Act also amends the Housing Act 1996. This amendment came into force in July, as I mentioned, and changes district council responsibilities to people suffering from domestic abuse. From that date, all eligible applicants who are homeless because of domestic abuse will automatically be provided with temporary accommodation. This means that we must provide additional accommodation, and we have to assist anybody who comes to us who fulfills the needs criteria. And whilst it's clearly welcomed, in that we're dealing with this in a coordinated way throughout all the districts, boroughs, and led by the county council, it does, of course, put a strain on our temporary accommodation, which is already very difficult. Before I take any questions, I would like to mention one thing, which is about a member of our team. And the senior management team will know that, and most people in the building at Oaklands know, that Emma Shuttleworth is retiring this week. In fact, Friday will be her last day. Emma's one of those officers that probably most of you will not have had need to contact. You pass on any housing inquiries to her team and it sort of just gets dealt with. She herself is a very unassuming lady, and yet she has run that department for many years and has been, I think, an officer in Mid-Sussex. She will not admit to anything other than more than 25 years, but I suspect it's a lot longer than that. She is by far one of the longest serving officers in the council. When people talk about seeing a swan on the water, and you know that underneath the legs are paddling away, with this particular department and with this particular business unit leader, you don't even see the swan. All you see is the water drifting by. And you have to get underneath the surface to see the work that's going on and the way it's been handled. And I think we all owe a huge debt to Emma for her work, and I hope people will take the opportunity to, in some way, thank her. What she's doing in terms of departing is she's not having a party, which is very typical of Emma. She's just going to quietly slip away, but she will be in the building in the main housing office on Thursday, I think, if anybody wishes to go and say goodbye to her. And we look forward to welcoming her replacement, Margaret Gates, who has been with us for a month in a handover. So we wish Emma well in her retirement. Thank you. And we should pass that on, Catherine, for us.
Thank you very much, Councillor Salisbury. Has anyone got any questions for Councillor Salisbury? I can't see any. So thank you very much. You obviously covered everything. Thank you very much. Okay, we're now going to move on. We're going to move on to item 15, motions on notice. Okay, this item is titled The Future of Clare Hall Site, and the motion is proposed by Councillor Richard Bates and seconded by Councillor Robert Eggleston. Councillor Bates, would you like to introduce the motion? As the proposer of the motion, you have 5 minutes to do this.
I see the mic is on cue. We've been deliberating since we've been hearing from the Cabinet member earlier on about the Clare Hall situation and what's proceeding. We give the benefit of the doubt on this because we're not going to get an answer about Clare Hall being opened again shortly. But we will, debate this Clare Hall in the future when the report has been prepared. So therefore, under 13.8, the withdrawal of motion, we'd like to withdraw this particular motion at this stage, and Councillor Eggleston is my seconder, has agreed, and I need the Council's consent as well.
Thank you very much. In that case, we're going to move on. So we're now going to move on to motion B, which is climate change, which is a motion proposed by Councillor Paul Brown, seconded by Councillor Anne Eves. Councillor Brown, as you wish, proposing the motion, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. The Intergovernment Panel on Climate Change recently issued its 6th assessment report. It's been described as Code Red for humanity by the Secretary-General of the United Nations. The IPCC includes 95 affiliated states, and the report is an assessment of the latest science on climate change for the last 7 years. It concludes that climate change is occurring everywhere and everyone is affected. It's not just wildfires in Australia and Siberia, it's flooding in Burgess Hill and Hassocks. The warming is unprecedented for thousands of years. The changes are human-induced. We are seeing increases in extreme weather events, heavy rainfall, droughts, etc. These changes will increase in frequency and intensity with further CO2 emissions and warming. Every tonne of CO2 emissions adds to global heating. We all know this now. This council accepts this, which is why it has commissioned a report from consultants Ricardo to establish our carbon emission baselines as a district and to see how we can decarbonise. We await the results of that report with interest and impatience. This motion seeks to reiterate the Council's commitment to reducing carbon emissions over 2 years since its last statement in June 2019 and on the eve of the COP26 conference in Glasgow. It's about taking a meaningful role in helping residents and ensuring developers play their part, and its readiness not just to implement current legislation, but to ask more of various suppliers and stakeholders. So this Council resolves to intensify its effort to reduce carbon emissions throughout the district, to take a lead in helping residents to reduce their own carbon footprints, and to play its full part in the national effort to achieve net zero by 2035. So why 2035 and not 2050, the official government target for net zero? Quite simply, because 2050 is much too late. It's a date rather arbitrarily chosen in order to facilitate discussions on the topic ahead of the crucial Paris climate talks. To cite another report, this one, issued at the end of August by an independent panel of experts, the Climate Crisis Advisory Group, achieving net zero by 2050 gives us only a 50-50 chance of meeting the 1.5 degree threshold temperature rise. And many experts feel this is a very optimistic assessment, and that our chances of achieving this are far lower, and that we are currently heading towards a rise of 2.7 degrees by 2050. In other words, well off target, and if the difference between 2.7 and 1.5 doesn't sound significant, let me assure you that even a 2-degree rise will be catastrophic. After all, we're already seeing extreme weather events worldwide, and we're currently at just over 1 degree of centigrade warming. Reducing CO2 emissions relies on technology innovations which are nowhere near being realised, and on inventions which may never materialise. Does this council really think that it's a gamble worth taking? Instead of aiming for net zero, we must do everything we can to reduce emissions now. That's the only realistic route open to us. Of young people feel worried about climate, eco-anxiety, and they're crying out for us to take actions. Many councillors have the privilege of being grandparents and parents. Our children and grandchildren have already made significant sacrifices during this pandemic to keep us safe. It's time that we reward that sacrifice by ensuring all of our policies are implemented to prevent the most severe impacts in Mid-Sussex. Thank you.
The motion is seconded by Councillor Eves. Do you wish to speak now?
Reserve my right, Chair.
Thank you. Okay. Does anyone wish to speak on this motion that has been proposed by Councillor Paul Brown at this moment? No? Okay. We also have before us an amendment that is proposed by Councillor Henwood and seconded by Councillor Hicks. Councillor Henwood, would you like to speak?
Thank you. The amendment is simply reading by asking officers to review the Friends of the Earth's Climate Action Plan for councils and reporting to the Sustainable Economy Working Group which of the steps proposed in the Climate Action Plan for councils this council could seek to adopt. I think this is a particularly timely amendment because at the present this particular working group is meeting and we are looking at ways that this district can impact. There are a lot of very remote proposals, but we must be looking at the way this district can impact. This is like considering a partnership, which we have been doing at this committee, and this is an extended partnership. So I would like the council to consider this amendment. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Henwood. This amendment motion is seconded by Councillor Hicks. Do you wish to speak on? Please do so.
Just in terms of the amendment, I think it just adds to the spirit of the main motion in terms of members of all parties here are concerned about climate change. But I think we particularly want to underline the urgency of the need to take action. And although we're currently talking about strategy in terms of the working group, we're anxious to see that implemented in terms of practice and what the council can do to make practical changes. And noting in terms of 2035 as a target, we could have 2030, which corresponds to what the county council has in terms of for its own activities to become carbon neutral. What's important is that the motion is expressing the urgency of the situation to take action. And I notice on another amendment elsewhere, we're talking about some positives in terms of what the council's done, but we can also talk about negatives in terms of things like the recycling rate being below West Sussex average, being below national average in terms of the actual domestic waste recycled in Mid-Sussex. And yes, we have made a substantial reduction in CO2, but again, that's below the average for West Sussex, and it's below the average for the whole of England. So it's important that we highlight the priority to actually proceed beyond strategies and take some action on these measures. Thank you.
Thank you. In view of this proposed amendment, could I ask Councillors Brown and Eves if you accept the amendment?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. We accept the amendment, and it brings more precision to the proposal, to the substantive motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we are now going to discuss the amended motion. Has anyone wished to speak on the amended motion now before us? No? Doesn't Councillor Bradbury want to speak?
Chairman, thank you. Yes, I do. And we've given notice of a further amendment to the motion. So if you'd like me to introduce that amendment now, Chairman.
That would be. Thank you.
Okay. First of all, can I just say I'd really like to thank Councillors Brown and Eves for bringing forward this motion. I think it clearly is an important, a very important area that we're all engaged in. And I think you know, we've probably all got some sympathy with the aims and aspirations that are contained within that motion. So my concern when I read the motion, though, Chairman, was it carries almost carries with it the implication that this council isn't doing very much in its work on climate change. So I've brought forward this amendment in what I hope is a positive spirit of contribution to try and delineate better some of the work that the council is actually in fact undertaking. And in particular, I must admit, I was quite surprised that the original motion didn't reflect on the decision that was made by the cabinet member on the 26th of March to appoint Ricardo to advise the council on its progress in this work, a very important piece of work. And I was also quite surprised, I must say I was quite surprised that it didn't reference at all the excellent work that the sustainability group is doing. In fact, Chairman, I'm particularly surprised that it didn't mention that, because Councillor Eves is actually a member of that group. And I'm quite surprised, therefore, that their motion did not acknowledge all this work that the council is undertaking. So I propose this amendment with the best of intentions, because I really think it's quite important that the residents of Mid-Sussex understand the important work and the investment that this council is already making in this area and will continue to do so. Chairman, you asked us all at the start to be brief, so I could go on, but I'll stop there.
Very much. And the amendment is tabled, isn't it? I think we all have got a copy of the amendment. So you have a seconder, Councillor Bradbury? Thank you, Councillor Ashebus. Do you wish to speak now or reserve your right?
May I reserve my right, Chairman?
You may. Thank you very much. Okay, we'd now like to open up to the floor to debate the amendment. Has anyone got anything they wish to say? Councillor Henwood.
I think we all agree on the urgency, but I would like to point out a few concerns I have about your particular motion. When you talk about up above that the carbon dioxide levels have gone down, from information, and we have had a lot of information, I happen to be on the Sustainable Economy Working Party, and we've actually, it's been very good. We've had a lot of statistics, a lot of information about places, about people, about partnerships, but one particular emissions, carbon dioxide emissions, and this is what I think the council can really take on board. Domestic carbon emissions from Mid-Sussex revealed the slowest rate of reduction in West Sussex, ranking among the weakest recorded in any local authority. Just let's have facts, accurate facts, please. That's what we're after, not false. The other problem I have under the resolution is the last part, that the vision of the sustainable economy strategy should be. We have not come to our vision. We have not considered it. We've discussed it. We've shared ideas, which is very, very good and very positive, but we have not resolved our vision. I think a statement like this would be prejudicial to the working of a cross-party committee. I think those on the committee will agree that we still want a freedom to explore and share. That's comments. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Councillor Henwood, your concerns are noted. Councillor Eves.
Thank you, Chair. I might as well speak now, even though I'm a seconder, I think.
I was going to invite you to
okay, thank you.
As the second of the original motion, so you can do that now or
okay,
raise?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'd like to think we have come a long way since 2019 when we passed a climate motion, and really this is to see whether that is the case. We were talking then about things like green flags. We weren't aware, there wasn't such an awareness of the urgency of the climate threat. So during that time, we passed a motion to say that we were setting up a sustainability and climate change panel. It only met twice, and then it faded away. It was abolished. We said we'd like electric vehicle charging points. We haven't seen a single one added in 3 years. It's just not happening. That's why we're tabling this motion. There really hasn't been any modal shift. There was no ambition for modal shift. The cycle route, Haywards Heath to Burgess Hill, hasn't happened. The food waste collection hasn't happened. I understand the government are now, again, changing the goalposts, so I understand that. DP 39 in the district plan isn't really working. The first phase of the Northern Arc, we're still getting the gas boilers in. I'm not convinced by the biodiversity net gain at all either when you're planting trees under other trees and you're restricting the movement of deer. Even single-use plastic, we haven't eliminated that in our own house. Ricardo, yes, I know about Ricardo and I have mentioned it in my motion, taking into account advice we have commissioned on how this district can achieve net zero. I have mentioned that, but as you say, it was commissioned in March. Where is it? We haven't even had the baseline. We haven't had anything from Ricardo. So somebody's sitting on the information. A lot of the Conservative amendments are repetitious, and obviously we aren't happy with the carbon emissions decrease, the pace of them. Our per capita figures are lower than national average because we don't have any coal-fired plants in our district or heavy industry. So I'm not convinced by the Conservative amendments, and I would not like to preempt the findings of the working group, indeed, so I would not like the vision to be in this motion. Thank you.
Eves. If I have no other question... Oh. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I note and applaud this council on the measures already taken in relation to the Oakland site. These are tangible, but very, as I say, welcome, and they are tangible, but they're very small in numerical value to the wider Mid-Sussex community, as referred to by Councillor Eves. Some crackling here. Sorry. We've, for instance, one of the climate change strategies was to encourage cycling to the council offices. And yesterday, when I visited the council site, there wasn't a single cycle in the cycle pods. So, no member of staff had cycled there, and I find this when I cycle to the and park my bike in the public place that there's hardly anybody doing it. We've waited for 3 years without really tangible progress, and I'm considering net zero carbon emissions. When will we get the report on that? Councillor Eves has just asked. And finally, this amendment's vision of the sustainable economic strategy, a vibrant district that is attractive, resilient, innovative, and balanced social well-being and environmental protection and sustainable economic growth. Really, I'm sorry, but it's apple pie, it's motherhood and apple pie. These words don't adequately replace the motion that I tabled and focus on a need for a net zero by 2035. So this amendment has not adequately adopted the simple recommendations proposed to intensify, to lead residents, and to recognise the paucity of action and excuses, really, since 2018. I can't support this motion. Thank you.
Eggleston and John Belsey.
Thank you. It's very pleasing to hear general agreement across all parties about the severity of this issue, and I would certainly endorse that. However, the proposed amendment to this, I think, gives the impression, whether it's intended or not, that what is currently taking place is enough. And I certainly recognise and accept the hard work of members of the council and the officers to move forward on this agenda, and I very much want to applaud that and support that. But the amendment, as it's proposed, would maybe unwittingly give the impression that we think that that's fine, that we're doing enough now, and that's not true. This is perhaps the most important issue that any of us should be considering. It's almost unprecedented in its severity. The original motion simply asks that we look further and see what more we can do because of the severity of the issue. It's not really asking for very much. It's simply asking to consider a variety of other things and push as hard as we possibly can to do as much as we can on this issue. The amendment, I think, would give the impression that we think we're already doing enough, and I don't think we are. So I would certainly oppose the amendment and support the motion as it is currently substantive. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Belsey.
Thank you, Chairman, and thanks for all the comments so far. As a member of the Conservative Group and indeed the Cabinet Member for Environment, I'd just like to assure everyone that I don't think at all we are complacent or that we're satisfied with where we are. I think we've all got aspirations and are sympathetic to many of the points raised across all sides of the chamber, and we want to see what we can do further to improve our position, balancing that against the other needs and issues that we face, that we deal with across the district. I just particularly wanted to raise the points that Councillor Eves made, which I can understand to an extent about the difference between 2019 and 2021. Of course, we have faced a pandemic in that period, and some of those points you've specifically raised, like the electric vehicle charging points, we have got the expectation that they will be rolled out by early 2022. We are about to engage with our communities on the LC WIPs, the local cycling walking infrastructure plans for East Grinstead and Hayward Heath, and work with the Place and Connectivity Programme into Burgess Hill. I've mentioned before the food waste, and you alluded to that yourself, some of the complexities there, albeit that is something that I think we will be in place to bring forward next year. So I think between 2021 and 2022 we will see a lot of progress, and just to reassure people in that respect. So I think we are making a positive, very positive progress in a number of really significant areas, and I share the aspirations that we all would like to carry on making more progress. We're not complacent with where we are. We aspire to do more, and I believe that the resolution as written allows us to build on the work that's currently in place and to give people the freedom to try and improve the position further for our residents of Mid-Sussex. Thank you.
Thank you. A couple more. Councillor Hicks.
Order in terms of the a motion as proposed seeks to bind an independent working party, and I just wonder if that complies with the procedures of the council.
I refer to Tom Clark, please.
It wouldn't bind the working party. They can carry on with their work. But obviously it notes a way forward which the working party may well disagree with, and go to scrutiny on that, and that will be further debated.
Thank you. I believe it may be our last speaker before we go to the leader. Councillor Eggleston. Did you wish to speak? No? Fine. Thank you. Okay, so now we proceed to Councillor Ash-Edwards, the leader.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and I think all members agree that this is an important issue, and I think really what this debate draws out really is whether we proceed by taking tangible and measurable actions to deliver environmental protection and move towards net zero, which is the approach that this Conservative administration is taking, or whether we go round in circles with untangible, unmeasured objectives. And I think it is absolutely the case that we need to focus on what we can deliver as a council that has real impact. And that's the point that this amendment makes. And I understand that opposition members don't always like some of the approach and things that are being delivered, but it is a fact that carbon emissions have fallen by more than a quarter in Mid-Sussex over the last decade, and of course more needs to be done, but that is a significant reduction at a time when our economy has grown as well. I won't go through all of the points that have been made in terms of some of the criticisms that have been made, and I'll just refer members back to some of the points that have been made earlier in this meeting, actually, about some of the achievements that have been made in terms of our environment and protecting our environment and moving towards net zero. But I do just want to make the point just around recycling rates, because this council's recycling rate was just criticised there, and I would just like to confirm to the council that there is obviously much more to do in terms of driving up recycling rates, and Councillor Belsey has referred to some of the aspirations and projects that we're taking forward to do that. But this council has a much higher recycling rate than the nearest Liberal Democrat council in Eastbourne, which has about a 10% lower recycling rate than we do, and indeed the nearest Green Party council in Brighton and Hove that has about a 15% lower recycling rate than Mid-Sussex. So let's focus on tangible actions that we can deliver and take those forward. And I think I would ask the council to support the amendment on that basis, Chairman, and through the Sustainable Economy Working Group, I think we should support that work that's in hand, because it's a serious piece of work that needs to be done. We've got the expert advice commission, particularly around options and recommendations for getting to net zero, and I think we should let that work happen so that we can actually in time have a proper debate around a set of actionable recommendations that we can deliver on as a district council. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ash-Edwards. We're going to now move on to a vote on the amendment by show of hands. Could I invite... Pardon?
Just to clarify, the original motion from Councillor Brown and Eves was then added to by the motion from Councillor Henwood and Councillor Hicks. So that's the motion, and then the amendment was moved by Councillor, I've gone blank, Bradbury, and seconded by Councillor Ash-Edwards. So we're voting on Councillor Bradbury's amendment.
So, I need 5 people to request that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Okay, so I'll leave that to Tom Clark to do the roll call, and then if you say for or against, is that right?
Yes, please, or abstain.
Or abstain.
Councillor Ash-Edwards. For. Councillor Bates. Councillor Belsey, John Belsey. For. Councillor Margaret Belsey.
For.
Councillor Bradbury. For. Councillor Brown. Against. Councillor Cartwright. Against. Councillor Clark. For. Councillor Cogunner-White. Councillor Coote. For. Councillor Cornish. Against. Councillor Cromie. For. Councillor DeBell. For. Councillor Demir. For. Councillor Dempsey. Against. Councillor Edwards. Against. Councillor Eggleston. Abstain. Councillor Ellis. For. Councillor Eves. Against. Councillor Forbes. For. Councillor Gibbs. Against. Councillor Gibson. Abstain. Councillor Hatton. Against. Councillor Henwood. Abstain. Councillor Hicks. Against. Councillor Hillier. For. Councillor Hussain. Abstain. Councillor Jackson. Against. Councillor Knight. For. Councillor LeBand. Abstain. Councillor Anthea Lee. For. Councillor Mockford. For. Councillor Peacock. For. Councillor Phillips. Abstain. Councillor Salisbury. For. Councillor Smith. For. Councillor Sparashi. Councillor Stockwell. For. Councillor Swetman. For. Councillor Trumbull.
For.
Councillor Walker.
For.
Councillor Webb. Councillor Webster. And Councillor Whittaker. And have I missed anybody? No. Chairman, that's 26 in favour, 11 against and 7 abstentions. So the amendment is carried, so it becomes the motion, and we need to vote on that unless there's further debate.
Well, did you wish to speak?
Yes, if I may, Chairman, thank you. Terry, I'm not sure I need that. Chairman, I'm not sure that we have done the best for our residents this evening in this process. If I may go back to something that we covered earlier this evening, we were talking about the governance review. And coming out of that was that we need greater cross-party cooperation. I know for a fact that nobody here spoke with the Cabinet member about this proposed amendment. This was not discussed. Had we discussed that, we might actually have come up with something which was cohesive and to the benefit of our residents. As it is, I do not think that we have done our residents a favour this evening because we have not worked together, and we could have done. I think we have missed an opportunity here, and we need to learn from that. I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Trumbull. The motion has been carried, and it becomes the motion as amended and requires another vote. So can I ask by a show of hands, those in favour?
Could we have a recorded vote on this, please?
Yes, if we got 5 people. Thank you. So we're having a recorded vote to become the motion as amended.
Councillor Eggleston.
That, Councillor Eggleston.
Yes, thank you, Chair. On point of order, just for clarity, we're voting on the motion as initially amended by the Liberal Democrat group and now as amended by the Conservative group.
We're voting on the Conservative amendment, which has become the motion, which is in your papers.
Yeah, but you have to agree that the amendment becomes the motion.
Quite answer the question. The Green Group accepted the Liberal Democrat amendment, which formed part of their motion, the main motion. The Conservative amendment amended parts of the original motion, but the Liberal Democrat amendment, which has been accepted, is now part of the main motion.
Yes, it was part of the main motion moved by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Eaves. There was then an amendment to that, which is a full motion in itself. That amendment has just been carried, so the amendment is now the motion, and we're voting on that as the motion.
I hope that explains the situation.
The full wording is in the papers that are before you.
Can the monitoring officer perhaps just clarify whether the paragraph that was inserted by the Liberal Democrats that refers to the Friends of the Earth Climate Action Plan, was that knocked out by our discussion and voting on the Conservative amendment?
Yes, because that formed part of the original motion, and the original motion is no longer there because the amendment has been carried.
So we're voting now on the amendment. Can I have a show of hands in favour? Are we doing a recorded vote? I'm so sorry. So
it's the same vote again. Councillor Edwards.
For.
Councillor Bates. Councillor Belsey. John Belsey. For. Councillor Margaret Belsey.
For.
Councillor Pete Bradbury. For. Councillor Brown. Abstain. Councillor Cartwright. I'm confused, but I think I'm abstaining. Anthea Lee. Councillor Mockford. Councillor Peacock. Councillor Phillips. Councillor Salisbury. Councillor Smith. Councillor Sprashy. Councillor Stockwell. Councillor Sweatman. Councillor Trumbull. Councillor Walker. Councillor Webb. Councillor Webster. And Councillor Whittaker. That's 28 in favour, 1 against and 15 abstentions. So that amendment that became the motion is carried. Thank you, Chairman.
thank you very much. So we move on to item 16, which is questions from members pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 10.2. I believe there's a question on behalf of Councillor Alison Bennett on solar panels to be put by Councillor Eggleston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There are, and you're going to ask me to read them out, and I'm going to have to find them. So if you can give me 30 seconds. Here we go. Thank you for bearing with me. So on behalf of Councillor Bennett, this concerns the Solar Together scheme. She asked the following questions to update the Council. What is the nature of the commercial relationship between iChooser, MSDC and West Sussex County Council? Secondly, what costs and or revenue arise for the Council because of this partnership? Thirdly, where is the assessment that this has the highest impact on climate change per pound spent? And then fourthly and finally, given this is by its nature for the more well-off residents, given the need to own their roof, what programme is being offered to ensure other residents are also able to benefit from policies to cut their electricity bills, particularly those on universal credit? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eggleston. May I ask Councillor Belsey to respond?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Eggleston, Councillor Alison Bennett via Councillor Eggleston for the questions. In respect of the questions, just so Solar Together is a partnership. West Sussex County Council is the lead contractor, and they've entered into an agreement with iChooser, which is a group independent of West Sussex County Council and Mid-Sussex District Council, to deliver solar together for Sussex. All the local district and borough authorities of West Sussex have supported participation of this contract. The scheme is cost neutral, although there is a potential for a small amount of revenue to be generated after mailing costs are recovered, and any income arising will be allocated to the Fuel Poverty Fund held by West Sussex County Council. As said, regarding the questions to impact on climate change per pound spent, the scheme is cost neutral to the council, if that was the question. Regarding the point about needing to own your own roof, there are a wide range of schemes across the county which don't depend on house ownership. If you go through www.westsussexenergy.co.uk and then click on Advice in your area, you'll see for Mid-Sussex there are sections on home energy support, a number of different energy efficiency schemes, and housing repair and heating grants, and they are available to a variety of different owners and tenants. So certainly supporting those who are less well off than others within the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Belsey. Councillor Eggleston, do you wish to make a supplementary question which will be related to the original?
So unfortunately, my leader didn't prime me with any supplementaries, so no. All I would say is that, I mean, I've never received one of these letters, and so I can understand how more vulnerable residents might be concerned when they receive something like this in the post. You know, we're all inundated with email scams, phishing, and unsolicited mail, and I think what is useful to observe. So I actually, because I'm a Google fanatic, went and looked at it all. And I think what a useful learning point maybe to take on board, and perhaps you could comment, as it has to be a question, is whether there is some other way that we can, communicate the right word's lost, but the robustness of this scheme to our residents, so that we can allay some concerns.
Thank you, Councillor Eggleston. Do you wish to respond, Councillor Belsey?
Only just to acknowledge the points that Councillor Eggleston makes, and I'm sure we'll look at that again for future communications.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you all for your attendance this evening. I'm going to close the meeting at 9:20. I would ask you to remain in place for a few seconds for the live stream to end, and if you'd leave by row through the back, just to avoid any clustering of people together. Thank you again for your attendance this evening.